Well, the comfortable world of the oligarchs is continuing to be shaken up by a series of political earthquakes that show no sign of stopping. And it's actually earthquakes that are caused by the insane attempt of that oligarchy to impose their will on a world which is ready to move into a new era of peace and development. I'm Harley Schlanger with your LaRouche Organization video update for today, January 7th, 2025. I'm going to go through some of the aspects of this earthquake to give you a sense of what must be done to bring us safely to the other side. That is, to remove the power of the oligarchs to direct policy, and instead to get out of the realm of geopolitics into the realm of human activity, creative activity to build a world where every child has a potential for a better future. There are several examples that I have for you. First, the continuing efforts of the Doctors Against Genocide. This is an organization of medical professionals, and it's having an effect. They're having a series of webcasts, of press conferences, putting out statements to expose the lies that the Israelis are not carrying out genocidal activities against the Palestinians. The Israeli assault is continuing. Another doctor was murdered yesterday. The Doctors Against Genocide are, among other things, calling for a defense of the lives of Palestinians and for nations to show the moral fiber to act to defend children who otherwise are being victimized by the Israeli assault. They've released a call for the call for the release of Dr. Abu Safia, who's the director of Kamal Adwar Hospital, who may have been he's definitely under arrest. He may be being tortured by the Israelis because they consider him a potential terrorist. And what's his crime? Trying to keep a hospital open. The Schiller Institute has put out a statement. It's past time for genocide to stop. I'll have a link to that in the description section, and I'd urge you to circulate it. Second shock. Well, in the northern state, as Trump calls it, of Canada, excuse me, Prime Minister Trudeau has announced his resignation as party leader of the Liberal Party and therefore as Prime Minister. Parliament will be out of session until March 24th. That means Canada will not have a government until then, although it will have an interim government. And the question is, who will replace Trudeau in that period? Two names that appear quite prominently are Mark Carney, the former head of the Bank of Canada and the Bank of England, and Chrystia Freeland, the former finance minister of Canada, who resigned to precipitate the crisis which led to Trudeau leaving. Both are Harvard graduates and on the board of trustees of the World Economic Forum. They may be the only two Canadian politicians who could be worse than Trudeau. Trudeau's problem is that he governed essentially as a British Liberal and worked through the Five Eyes to support the NATO wars, to have a completely leaky border. And when it came to working with the United States, he made it clear that he's not a fan of Donald Trump. Well, most Canadians are not a fan of Justin Trudeau, and it looks as though he's trotting off to the sunset, at least for the moment. Another shock, Austria. The winners in the last election were the leaders of the Freedom Party, the FPÖ as it's called. There was an attempt to put together a four-party coalition government to keep the FPÖ from having control of the government. That failed. And so now the president has asked the leader of the Freedom Party, Kickel, to try to form a government. Now, Kickel and the FPÖ are anti-European Union. They're against the Ukraine war. They favor a renewed relationship with Russia. And they want to enforce immigration laws. Now, they're under attack because of this policy as racist and extremist. What's extremist about opposing wars? What's racist about defending borders? the European Union is trying to overturn Austria's neutral status, and this has a number of people in Austria quite upset. So this is being looked at over the shoulder from Germany, where Germany will have elections on February 23rd. Now, the key thing on the German elections is that they're occurring as Germany is entering into an economic disaster, the worst economy in 75 years, according to some of the economic think tankers. There's a deindustrialization underway, including taking down the auto sector. It's driven by high energy costs, the oppressive regulations of the green ideology, a drop in exports. There's a 10.6% increase in filings for insolvency. Debt is at record levels in Germany. The usual budget surplus is gone. The present government of the Social Democrats, the Greens, and the Free Democrats has collapsed. And the fear among some is that the Alternative for Deutschland will emerge as the victor, if not in the February 23rd Chancellor elections, in the September general elections for Parliament. Now, the Alternative for Deutschland has a similar program to the Freedom Party of Austria, but especially demand to end the war in Ukraine. The German defense minister, who keeps talking about Germany having to get war ready, means they're diverting huge amounts of money to the kleptocrats in Ukraine and to the German military industrial sector. And so this is not very popular. There's a rebellion against it. And what we're seeing is that the situation overall in the European Union is defined by the instability that comes when you try to impose an economic fantasy on a real situation. And the real situation is the decision to sanction Russia, to cut off cheap oil and gas, to turn against China, is wrecking the European economy. Now, finally, Trump's victory was certified yesterday in the Congress. It was a no-drama event. The Electoral College vote was counted, and he was certified as president. Now, this is part of the political earthquake, the rejection of the existing establishment as failures. Their policies have led to permanent war, permanent economic dislocation, austerity as a solution, bailing out the largest of the corporate cartels, and putting the mom and pop stores and the engines of economic growth out of business. So a political earthquake is a good thing. The question is, will there be solutions presented by those who survive the earthquake? Now, that's part of what's going to be discussed tomorrow when Helge Zeppler-Roush has a weekly dialogue. This week, the guest will be Scott Ritter, the well-known anti-war activist, military veteran. Scott was involved in the post-Cold War. Well, actually, he was involved in Iraq as a weapons inspector for the UN. He's written a book, Disarmament in the Time of Perestroika, Arms Control, and the End of the Soviet Union. So be sure to watch that. It will be tomorrow, I believe at 12:30 p.m. That's Wednesday at 12:30 p.m. And you can look for the link to that at the schillerinstitute.com website. So as this political earthquake continues, don't try to find a safe place to hide. There's no safe place to hide in an earthquake. What's necessary is an action to bring others to the kind of resolution which provides real security, which is a return to the economic policies that produce a real physical surplus and an end to the monetarism and the speculative system that's been running the world economy for the last 5 or 6 decades. So thanks for joining me today. Don't forget the webcast tomorrow, and I'll see you again soon.